Hi, my name is Amy Sinha, and I am here with one of my favourite female jazz musicians, Daryl Sherman. Hi, Daryl.
Hello, Amy. Once in love with Amy. Always in love with Amy. Now, there aren't too many Daryl songs, but I have just found out that Daryl, spelled D-A-R-Y-L, is a Welsh name. Usually men, though, so I'm glad you said your favorite female singer. We don't want anyone being confused here. Now, Amy, what should we talk about?
Well, we are all here for you, so whatever you would like to talk about. Why are you here?
We're all here for me.
We are. We're all here for you in this lovely venue.
For the first time in my life, it's all about me.
It is. Now, you've come to Swansea quite a few times, haven't you?
Yes, my first time was, oh my gosh, way back in the last century when I was asked to come over and play at the Brecon Festival, which was one of the most beautiful experiences as we drove from London on the highway with all this traffic, and then suddenly, magically, as we crossed over to the line and I started seeing signs with all these double consonants, I wondered, where are we? We are in definitely a different country, maybe a different planet. And then I saw those beautiful green hills. I think they call them the Brecon Beacons.
Yes.
And it was the best way to get acquainted with Wales and just the great jazz festivals, because they have music in many different venues throughout the city, the town, and I got to appear with 2 or 3 different groups. Got to sing, got to play piano, and from there I made friends with musicians, and I met one of Welsh's greatest citizens, David Griffiths.
David, we love David. He knows
He
everything.
is the love of Lapland.
Yes, he is.
Is it Lapland where he lives? Or Uplands?
Langland?
Langland. All right. I got one letter wrong. Okay. He's the love of Langland.
Yes. So what are you doing here in Swansea for, today?
Well, aside from having a wonderful reunion with special friends who I consider now almost an extended family, I started meeting from that very first time. I'm going to be playing for a wonderful jazz society. It's been around for quite a few years, and I've never met such a more enthusiastic and loving group of people. It's called Swansea Jazzland. And I believe they meet, I'm not sure if it's once a week or a few times a month, but occasionally they present American performers who come over, and I started hearing about it. Before that, I've been playing at the Taliesin Center.
Taliesin.
Oh, you say Taliesin, and I say Taliesin. Which is a wonderful, wonderful hall and on a stage, but I love the intimacy of a venue where the people are sitting all around and you can feel their energy and even offer requests, and are very, very knowledgeable. I always find that my Welsh audiences are smarter than I am about some of these songs. So I've come with a variety of musicians from London. I think last time I was there with the trombonist Roy Williams, and I've been down with great guitarist, I think Dave Cliff was with me, Dave Green, and a couple of times now, Andrew Kleindert.
And he's been very evasive. He'd never let me interview him. I've known him quite some time.
Well, maybe he's afraid you're going to let out some secrets that you may know, since you've known him for quite some time, Amy.
So you are from New York. Were you born there?
I was not born there. I was born in one of your original colonies, Rhode Island, the tiniest state, but probably the most densely populated, and moved to New York very soon after university. And my father was a musician. He was a trombonist. And he brought me up on all the great standards because he played jazz, but he also played on weekends in quartets where they would play music for listening and dancing. And when I was old enough to behave myself in a club, he would let me come and sit in. I know it was the first time was my 13th birthday, and when I got up there, and I'm so embarrassed now, but I sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and oh, there's nothing worse than a female Judy Garland impersonator. But then I learned lots of the standards. At that time, they were just starting what we call fake books. They were illegal at the time.
Oh,
They'd
really?
have them. They were. You have the melody line written out with just chord symbols on them in the words, and I just used to go through all of those and learn them. And at that time, actually sing many of them in the original keys, which I would not want to hear back now. But he would let me sit in, and sometimes, in this case, people would get up to dance. They would be playing a dance tempo like The Nearness of You. So I wouldn't actually I would finish the song, but then they would go into another song. And as you know, as a singer, it's called a modulation. They play a little passage, and then they're into another song. So you have to just stand there and look like, and just become a statue or something, and then wait and learn that you could call another song, tell them the key, and they'll go into that. And it was the greatest lesson in being a pro and just thinking on your feet, never having a rehearsal, which I find all these years later in my career, now that I'm more almost famous than ever, that I still never get a rehearsal with the musicians.
Spontaneity is good.
Yeah, well, my whole life has been an improvisation.
So then who have you played with? Might have been some great people.
Well, I'd rather who haven't I played with?
Okay, who haven't you played with? No, come on, name a few people you played with.
Well, I'm going to start with my hometown hero, a gentleman named Dave McKenna, who is one of the all-time great jazz piano stylists who has some fans over in England, but wasn't exposed enough here. And I didn't even know him growing up. He moved and started playing with Woody Herman's band and started playing in New York. And he has a style that's reminiscent of a stride style, but it really isn't. He uses his left hand a lot, but he also is extremely melodic, and it almost sounds like he has three hands. And although he mostly was known for playing solo, and he loved playing with saxophonists like Scott Hamilton, for instance, who is another Rhode Islander.
Oh, is he?
He certainly is, yes. But he was wonderful for singers. He was a wonderful cushion to ride on. And his sister, Jean, was my role model for the very first really live singer. And I used to listen to recordings that they made and learn all those songs. And I, to this day, still sing all the licks that she used. And Dave died, but she's still very much alive, and she still lives in my hometown. And I go back there every year for the annual homecoming. I was just there. In fact, I spent my first birthday in Woonsocket, Rhode Island in a long time. And she's always there.
What's her name again? Sorry.
Her name is Jean McKenna O'Donnell. So that was my start. And when I moved to New York some years later, Dave McKenna was playing at one of the great jazz clubs at the time, Michael's Pub. Through him, I got to sit in. The manager of the place took a bit of a shine to me, let me kind of hang out with the musicians in the back room, and during the last set, if it was a little quieter, he would encourage me to sit in. So this is at the very beginning, and I got to sit in with Benny Carter and
Wow.
John Bunch on piano. I was scared to death to play piano then, although I immediately got work because I could play piano. Because I could play piano and sing, I started working in these little pubs on Wall Street, Like one of my first gigs was 5:30 to 7:30. An agent sent me down there. I thought, oh boy, this is the big time. I'm gonna play for Wall Street Man, and oh, somebody's gonna discover me, and this is gonna be it. Well, they come in, they start drinking. These are the serious Scotch drinkers and smokers, smoking, drinking, never thinking. And what do? They get so bloody drunk, they light matches and start singing God Bless America. This is what I came to New York for? But thank goodness for Michael's Pub, because not only did I got to sing with Red Norvo, but I got to sit in the back room, and nobody tells stories like these old jazz musicians. Let's see, Stefan Grappelli was a great jazz violinist, but so is Joe Venuti. And some of his last gigs were there, and he would sit back and tell all these stories about how he would call all the bass players in Chicago, each one at a time, and tell them that he had a gig for them and they had to meet on such and such a street at 6 o'clock. And he told like 20 bass players. And so 20 bass players showed up on this street. And he was in a building taking pictures of this. That was his sort of sense of humor. But musicians like Dave would take me around to other places where you could sit in. This was in the 70s, and although still the best of the business had gone, I was lucky enough to still have enough going on where I went there to learn. I went there to listen to everybody, from someone who played in a restaurant, singing, playing background music, hotel players, wherever they had jazz trios. I would sit, have a drink, and listen and learn as much as I could. And then occasionally, if I felt the vibe was right, I might introduce myself. And through that, became, a little friendly, and eventually one in particular at a place called Jimmy Weston's, which was near Michael's Pub. This was a supper club that was open till 4 in the morning, and they had back-to-back trios. There would be one that played at 9, 11, and 1, and then the other one 10, 12, 2 a.m. There was and the house band, this guy Tommy Furtado, as it turns out, had been brought up in Rhode Island. Here we go, the Rhode Island connection. Small state, big heart though, and roots run really deep. And he was going on vacation this summer. He said, "Would you like to fill in for me?" I said, "Oh my goodness."